Do not live for others. These words sound almost cruel in a world where we are taught from childhood to please, to adapt, to shape ourselves according to the gaze of those who surround us. But Jean-Paul Sartre did not sugarcoat existence. For him, to live for others was not love, nor generosity, nor even a form of kindness. It was a slow death. It was the seed of a personal hell that grows silently inside us, feeding on every mask we wear, every role we play, every moment we betray our own truth to conform to the expectations of the crowd. Picture this: the curtain rises, and you find yourself on a stage you never chose, beneath the blinding light of 1,000 eyes. Each look is heavy, each judgment subtle, each smile a demand. You are no longer yourself, but a character molded by projections. You are trapped, and the prison is invisible, woven not of iron bars, but of the relentless need to be approved by others. Sartre called this bad faith, the lie we tell ourselves when we pretend to be what the other wants, instead of facing the frightening responsibility of our freedom. In this performance, applause is poison, because it seduces you into playing the role again. Booing is poison too, because it enslaves you with the terror of rejection. Either way, you are no longer free. You exist through the eyes of another, and that, Sartre says, is already hell. For what is hell, if not the eternal stage where you can never escape the gaze that defines you? Think about it. How many times have you silenced your own desires to avoid disappointing someone? How many times have you lived a life that wasn't yours, just to fit in, to be liked, to be safe? And at what cost? This cost is the inferno Sartre reveals: not flames, not demons, not torment inflicted from outside, but the suffocating imprisonment of a self abandoned to the gaze of the other. Cinema has often tried to portray hell with fire and sulfur, with monsters and eternal punishments. But Sartre does something far more terrifying. He shows that hell can be built inside a living room. A table, 3 chairs, 3 people, an eternal gaze, the inability to leave. That is the setting of his play No Exit, where the famous line emerges like a dagger in the dark: "L'enfer, c'est les autres." Hell is other people, but it is not simply their existence. It is our decision to live for their eyes, their judgment, their approval. So here is the warning: do not live for others, because every time you do, you surrender a piece of yourself, and slowly, without noticing, you dig your own grave, not in the earth, but in your own consciousness. And the deeper truth is even darker. In Sartre's world, there is no God to rescue you, no divine hand to justify your suffering. There is only your freedom, raw, heavy, unbearable. You are condemned to be free, he said. And if you waste this freedom by chaining it to the eyes of others, you are the one who locks the door of your cell. And once it closes, the key disappears. This is the beginning of Sartre's Inferno, the prison of the gaze. A gaze that follows you even when the eyes are gone, because it lives inside you. You have internalized the crowd. You carry it wherever you go. You are watched even in solitude. And there, in that silence, you discover the most frightening truth. You are your own jailer. Do not live for others. It sounds simple, almost like a motivational phrase you could find written on a poster, framed on a wall, or whispered in a self-help seminar. But under Sartre's eyes, it becomes something far more disturbing, far heavier, almost unbearable. Because Sartre was not interested in comfort, he wanted to rip open existence and show the raw wound underneath. And in that wound, he found a truth most of us spend our entire lives running from. The gaze of the other is a trap, and to live for it is to descend into hell. Imagine walking through a crowded street. Faces blur together, yet every glance feels like an arrow. One look lingers too long, and suddenly you feel exposed, judged, naked before a stranger you will never meet again. That sensation, that uncomfortable burn of being seen, is precisely what Sartre dissected. For him, consciousness was not a quiet private theater where you could retreat and be safe. No, consciousness was always vulnerable, always already invaded by the possibility of the other's gaze. You are never just you. You are what the other sees in you, what the other decides you are. And when you begin to believe in their vision more than your own, you vanish. You become their creation. This is why Sartre insisted that the most dangerous lie we tell ourselves is the lie of identity. We tell ourselves, I am a teacher, I am a worker, I am a husband, I am a saint. But behind those words, there is always the echo of someone else's definition. The teacher exists because students call him one. The saint exists because others declare him holy. Strip away the crowd, the titles, the applause, and what remains? Silence, an abyss, a self terrified of the nakedness of freedom. And so, to escape the silence, we cling to roles, to labels, to masks. We live for others, hoping that if enough people define us, we will not have to face the horror of defining ourselves. But in that bargain, we surrender our essence. We accept chains made of smiles, of expectations, of judgment. And soon, we no longer ask, who am I? We only ask, who do they want me to be? That is the birth of Sartre's hell. Picture a prison without walls, without guards, without bars. The only chains are invisible, woven by the invisible threads of expectation. You smile when you want to scream. You agree when you want to resist. You follow when you want to flee. And all the while, a voice whispers, be careful, they are watching. This is the voice of the other, the eternal spectator. Sartre's genius was to show us that we cannot escape being seen, but we can choose not to live as prisoners of that vision. And yet, most of us refuse. Why? Because freedom is terrifying. To reject the definitions of others is to fall into the abyss of choosing for yourself, without excuses, without certainties, without guarantees. And many prefer hell to freedom. Many prefer the chains of applause to the silence of the abyss. Think of social gatherings. Think of the way we laugh at jokes we don't find funny, not at opinions we don't share. Mimic emotions we don't feel. These are not small acts of politeness, they are rituals of self-betrayal. Sartre would say, in that moment, you are not yourself. You are the reflection of the other's desire. You are living their script, and every repetition is another step down into the inferno. Now imagine extending that ritual for a lifetime. Imagine decades of living not as who you are, but as who others want you to be. At the end, you look in the mirror and see a stranger made of compromises, masks, fragments of other people's gazes stitched together like a grotesque patchwork. That is hell, to die never having lived as yourself. Cinema often portrays demons as monstrous beings with claws and fire. But Sartre's demons are much more subtle. They are your co-workers, your friends, your family, your audience. They do not need horns or flames, they only need eyes. Their gaze is enough, their presence is enough. And even when they are gone, their gaze haunts you, living on inside your mind like a ghost that refuses to leave. This is why Sartre's Inferno is not an afterlife punishment. It is here. It is now. It is in the dinner table where you silence yourself. It is in the office where you fake enthusiasm. It is in the church where you hide your doubts. Hell is not later, it is whenever you betray yourself to be accepted. And the irony is cruel. The more you try to please, the more you vanish. The more you vanish, the less anyone truly sees you. And so, in trying to escape loneliness, you end up more alone than ever, surrounded by people who love only your mask, not your essence. That is the tragedy Sartre reveals. To live for others is not love. It is suicide disguised as belonging. So again, hear the warning. Do not live for others. Do not trade your freedom for the chains of approval. For in Sartre's universe, there is no redemption for such a choice. There is no God who will one day return and tell you, it's okay, you did your best. No, there is only you, condemned to freedom. And if you choose to bury the freedom under the weight of the crowd, the punishment is not eternal flames, it is the eternal emptiness of never having existed at all. Do not live for others. Sartre did not mean this as an invitation to selfishness, nor as a denial of love, but as a brutal recognition that the moment you surrender your essence to the eyes of another, You are no longer free, and without freedom, existence becomes a cage. You may smile, you may speak, you may work, you may even pray, but all of it is hollow, rehearsed, scripted by someone else's expectation. And in that hollow life, Sartre whispers, you are already in hell. Imagine walking into a room full of mirrors. Each reflection distorts you slightly. One makes you taller, one makes you shorter, one makes your face grotesque, one makes you almost perfect. You turn in circles, lost in reflections, never sure which one is real. That is life when you live for others. Every gaze is another mirror, every expectation another distortion. You try to collect them, align them, create a single coherent image of yourself, but the task is endless, maddening. And the cruel truth is that the real you vanishes behind the endless parade of reflections. This is Sartre's diagnosis of modern existence. We are actors trapped in performances that never end. The theater lights never go dark. The audience never leaves, even in solitude. We feel the weight of eyes upon us. Why? Because we have internalized them. The father who judged you when you were a child, the teacher who measured you, the friends who mocked you, the lovers who demanded of you, all of them remain inside. They are ghosts, whispering constantly. Be this, not that. Say this, not that. Do not disappoint. Do not stand out. Do not fail. And soon, their whispers drown out your own voice. Sartre called this living in bad faith. Bad faith is not lying to others, it is lying to yourself. It is pretending that you are just a role, just a label, just an object defined by the world, when in fact you are condemned to be free, to choose, to invent yourself from nothing. But because this freedom is terrifying, you retreat. You say, I am just a worker, just a spouse, just a believer, just what they tell me I am. You build walls of identity to protect yourself from the chaos of choice, and in doing so, you betray yourself. Here lies the true terror. Hell is not a punishment inflicted upon you, it is a life you build yourself, brick by brick, with every compromise, every silence, every surrender to the gaze of others. It is not fire that burns you. It is the slow erosion of your essence until nothing remains but a puppet of expectations. Think of the countless lives lived this way. The man who never pursued his art because his family demanded stability. The woman who never spoke her truth because society demanded silence. The soul who sat quietly in pews, nodding to sermons, singing hymns, never daring to confess the doubts that burned inside. Outwardly, they lived respectable lives. Inwardly, they walked in flames. Because the greatest torment is not what others impose, it is what you deny yourself. Sartre dramatized this in No Exit. 3 souls locked in a room. No chains, no fire, no torturer. Just 3 people forced to sit together forever, condemned to see themselves through the gaze of the other. At first, they resist. They say, this is not hell. This is only a room. But as the silence grows heavy, as every word becomes a weapon, as every glance becomes a knife, they realize the truth. They are each other's torturers, not by intention, not by malice, but by presence. Because to be locked forever in the eyes of another is unbearable. This is the essence of Sartre as Inferno. To be trapped in a world where you are never free to define yourself, never free to be, always imprisoned in the endless reflection of the gaze. And here is the terrifying twist. Most of us live like this already. We may not be locked in a room, but we are locked in society, locked in families, locked in friendships that suffocate, relationships that demand masks, communities that punish authenticity. And we accept it. We even celebrate it. We call it belonging. We call it loyalty. But Sartre calls it what it is, the path to hell. Do not live for others, because the moment you do, you cease to live at all. You become a role, a projection, a shadow. And when death comes, as it always does, you will realize that you never existed not as yourself. You are a performance without an audience, a mask without a face. And in Sartre's universe, there is no redemption for this. No God to erase the mistake, no afterlife to offer consolation. There is only the brutal truth. You had freedom, and you buried it under the eyes of others. And that, he says, is the most unforgivable sin, not against God, but against yourself. This is why Sartre's philosophy feels like cinema. Not the bright cinema of romance and victory, but the dark cinema of endless corridors, of locked rooms, of faces that stare too long. Picture the screen fading to black, and all that remains is a pair of eyes, staring, never blinking, never leaving. That is the horror Sartre wants you to feel. That is the nightmare he insists is already real. And so the warning grows louder. Do not live for others. Because every time you do, you take another step down into the inferno, a place not beneath the earth, but within your own soul. Do not live for others. Sartre's warning now comes to us not as philosophy, not as theory, but as prophecy. Because in the silence of our own rooms, in the glow of our own screens, in the endless labyrinth of modern life, we have created the very prison he described. The inferno is no longer a metaphor, it is the architecture of our existence. Every gaze, every opinion, every judgment has been multiplied 1,000 times, amplified, immortalized in the digital ether. We live beneath an endless spotlight, a theater with no curtain, no intermission, no escape. And still, we bow, still, we perform, still. We live for others. But Sartre does not give us comfort. He does not offer salvation. He does not whisper that it is all right, that intention matters, that grace will cover the difference. No, for Sartre, there is only freedom, and the weight of it crushes us. Man is condemned to be free, he declared. Condemned, not invited, not gifted, condemned. Freedom is not wings, it is chains made of choice, of responsibility, of the terrifying knowledge that there is no one else to blame. And if we take this freedom and place it at the feet of others, begging them to define us, to absolve us, to save us, then the chains tighten and the fire grows. Picture a man standing in front of a mirror. Behind him, a crowd gathers, family, friends, colleagues, strangers. Each one paints his reflection with their colors. You are successful. You are a failure. You are holy. You are damned. He watches as his face changes, twisting into masks he does not recognize. He smiles when they want him to smile. He frowns when they want him to frown. And slowly, his true face dissolves. When the mirror is cleared, there is nothing left, a void. The void is Sartre's hell, the absence of self, the annihilation of authenticity, the suicide of freedom. And here is the horror. You cannot run from this. You cannot hide. Because the gaze of the other is not outside, it lives within you. Even when you shut the door, even when you escape the crowd, the voices remain. The mother's disapproval, the teacher's judgment, the lover's demand, they echo in your skull, louder than your own heartbeat. You carry your prison inside your chest. You are the guard, the prisoner, and the executioner. And there is no appeal, no parole, no escape. Sartre's vision is merciless. There is no heaven above to balance the weight, no divine promise to redeem the pain. There is only existence, raw and unrelenting. And if you waste it, if you let others script your life, you are already damned. For hell is not later. Hell is not beneath. Hell is not after death. Hell is the moment you look at yourself and realize you are nothing but a puppet on invisible strings. Do not live for others. This is the one commandment Sartre leaves us. Not because others are evil, not because love is impossible, but because freedom is sacred. To give it away is the only unforgivable sin. For to betray yourself is to vanish, to erase the one thing that makes you human, the power to choose. So ask yourself, whose gaze do you carry? Whose judgment do you fear? Whose applause keeps you alive? And then ask, what happens when the applause ends? What happens when the crowd leaves? What remains when the lights go dark? If the answer is nothing, then you are already in Sartre's inferno. But there is another possibility. Though Sartre does not make it easy, you can refuse. You can walk off the stage. You can stand in the silence of the abyss and claim your freedom. It will not be comfortable. It will not be safe. It will not be easy, but it will be yours. And only there in the raw, trembling nakedness of freedom can you escape the inferno. Imagine the screen now. A single figure walking through endless corridors, shadows stretching, eyes watching from the walls. The figure pauses, then closes their eyes. The eyes vanish. The whispers fade. The chains fall. And in that silence terrifying, absolute, merciless, they take their first real breath. That is not heaven. It is not salvation. But it is freedom. And for Sartre, freedom is the only exit from hell. So hear it once more. Like the tolling of a bell in the night, do not live for others. Do not surrender to their gaze. Do not bury yourself beneath their judgment. For in Sartre's world, hell is not fire, it is forgetting who you are. And to live as a ghost in your own life is a torment no demon could ever match. This is the truth. This is the abyss. This is the infernum.